October 24th, 1944. 02:30 hours. Taiwan Strait. Commander Richard O'Kane grips the periscope handles aboard USS Tang, watching a Japanese convoy scatter in panic as his torpedoes slam into transport ships. This is Tang's fifth war patrol, and her most successful. In the past 3 days, O'Kane's crew has sunk 10 Japanese ships, expending 22 of Tang's 24 torpedoes. 2 torpedoes remain. Ahead in the darkness, a Japanese transport, already damaged by Tang's previous attacks, limps toward the coast at 8 knots, escorted by a destroyer. O'Kane calculates the geometry quickly. Range 2,000 yards, target angle 90 degrees, closing speed 3 knots. Make ready tubes 7 and 8, O'Kane orders. This will be our last shot of the patrol. In the forward torpedo room, torpedo men open the outer doors on Tang's final 2 tubes. Each torpedo is a Mark 18 electric, 21 feet long, weighing 350 pounds, carrying 575 pounds of Torpex explosive in its warhead. Unlike steam torpedoes that leave visible wakes, electric torpedoes run quietly and invisibly beneath the surface. They're also notoriously unreliable. "Fire 7, O'Kane commands. The submarine shudders slightly as compressed air ejects the first torpedo. Tang's crew waits, 50 seconds at 46 knots for the torpedo to reach the target. Through his periscope, O'Kane tracks the torpedo's progress, watching for the telltale explosion that means a hit. But something is wrong. The torpedo, visible just beneath the surface in the moonlight, begins turning, not toward the target, but in a wide circle, back toward Tang. O'Kane's voice cuts through the control room with terrifying calm. "All ahead emergency, right full rudder, dive, dive." But there isn't enough time. The malfunctioning torpedo, running at 46 knots in a circular path, completes its turn and slams into Tang's stern at 02:37 hours. The warhead detonates. 575 pounds of Torpex explode against Tang's pressure hull, rupturing the stern compartments and flooding the engine room instantly. The most successful American submarine of World War II, with 33 confirmed kills representing over 116,000 tons of Japanese shipping destroyed, is going down. And 87 men are about to face the most terrifying death imaginable, trapped in a sinking submarine in enemy waters. Birth of a submarine. Hunter USS Tang SS-306 was commissioned on October 15, 1943, at Mare Island Naval Shipyard in California. She was a Balao-Class submarine, one of the most successful submarine designs of World War II. 309 feet long, displacing 1,426 tons surfaced and 2,024 tons submerged, powered by 4 Fairbanks-Morse diesel engines, producing 5,400 horsepower for surface operations and electric motors for submerged running. Maximum speed, 20.25 knots surfaced, 8.75 knots submerged. Operating depth, 400 feet, crush depth estimated at 650 feet. Armament, 10 21-inch torpedo tubes, 6 forward, 4 aft, carrying 24 torpedoes, 1 5-inch deck gun, and 2 50 caliber machine guns. Crew 10 officers and 70 enlisted men. On paper, Tang was identical to dozens of other Balao-Class submarines being built in 1943. But Tang had something that made her different. Commander Richard Hetherington O'Kane. O'Kane was 33 years old when he took command of Tang. Born in New Hampshire, he'd graduated from the Naval Academy in 1934, served aboard surface ships, then volunteered for submarine duty in 1938. His early submarine career was unremarkable. He served aboard several boats without distinction. But in 1942, O'Kane became executive officer aboard USS Wahoo under Commander Dudley "Mush" Morton. Morton was one of the most aggressive submarine commanders in the Pacific, taking Wahoo deep into enemy waters and attacking anything that moved. O'Kane learned Morton's philosophy. Submarines succeed through aggression, not caution. Get close to targets, inside 1,000 yards if possible. Attack from bold angles that enemy escorts don't expect. Trust your crew completely and train them relentlessly. Most importantly, take risks that doctrine says are suicidal, because calculated risks create opportunities that cautious tactics never achieve. Wahoo's war patrols under Morton and O'Kane were legendary. She sank 20 Japanese ships in 4 patrols, becoming the most feared submarine in the Pacific. But in October 1943, Wahoo was lost with all hands, including Morton, during her 5th patrol in the Sea of Japan. O'Kane survived only because he'd been reassigned to commission Tang. He took Morton's aggressive philosophy with him and refined it into a system that would make Tang the deadliest submarine in the U.S. O'Kane's philosophy. O'Kane's approach to submarine warfare differed from standard doctrine in fundamental ways. Navy doctrine in 1943 emphasized caution, attack from periscope depth at ranges of 2,000, 3,000 yards, fire spreads of 3-4 torpedoes to increase hit probability, withdraw immediately after firing to avoid counterattack. This approach was safe but inefficient. Hit rates were typically 20–30%, meaning submarines expended most of their torpedoes without achieving kills. O'Kane rejected this philosophy completely. His method? Approach targets at night on the surface, close to within 1,000 yards or less. Fire single torpedoes at point-blank range, where missing was almost impossible, then remain in the attack area to engage additional targets. The approach was dangerous. Japanese escorts could easily see submarines on the surface at close range, but it was devastatingly effective. At 800 yards range, a submarine could fire a single torpedo with 90% hit probability, compared to 4 torpedoes at 3,000 yards with 25% hit probability each. The mathematics were clear. O'Kane's method used fewer torpedoes to achieve more kills, but it required exceptional crew training, nerves of steel, and absolute trust between captain and crew. O'Kane spent Tang's shakedown period drilling his crew relentlessly, training them to reload torpedoes in under 5 minutes, half the standard time, teaching his fire control team to calculate firing solutions in their heads, rather than relying on the torpedo data computer, practicing surface attacks at night until his lookouts could spot targets before radar detected them. Most importantly, O'Kane trained his crew to stay calm under pressure. Panic kills submarines, O'Kane told his officers. Not depth charges, not Japanese destroyers. Panic. If you panic, you make mistakes. Mistakes sink submarines. So, we drill until nothing surprises us, until every emergency is just another procedure we've practiced 100 times. Tang's crew came to trust O'Kane completely, understanding that his aggressive tactics were calculated risks, not recklessness. Lieutenant Lawrence Savadkin, Tang's executive officer, would later recall, O'Kane would take risks that scared us, but he never took risks that he hadn't calculated carefully. Every attack was planned 3 moves ahead, like chess. He'd position Tang where we could escape if things went wrong, he'd have alternate plans ready, and he'd brief us thoroughly before every engagement. We trusted him because he never surprised us with improvisation. Everything was deliberate. Tang's first war patrol began in January 1904, operating near the Caroline Islands. The patrol was moderately successful. 5 Japanese ships sunk, 20,000 tons. But O'Kane was dissatisfied. "We're too cautious," he told his officers after returning. "We had opportunities for at least 3 more kills, but we withdrew when we should have pressed attacks. Next patrol, we're going deeper into enemy waters and staying longer in attack areas." The second patrol, February to April 1904, validated O'Kane's approach. Operating near Truk and the Palau Islands, Tang sank 10 Japanese ships totaling 39,000 tons. O'Kane's tactics were evolving. Instead of single attacks on isolated ships, he began attacking entire convoys, remaining in the attack area for hours, methodically sinking ship after ship while evading escorts. On one memorable night near Truk, Tang attacked a 6-ship convoy protected by 3 escorts. O'Kane spent 4 hours stalking the convoy, attacking from different angles, reloading torpedoes between attacks, and ultimately sinking 4 transports before withdrawing. Japanese convoy commanders reported to Tokyo that they'd been attacked by multiple submarines. They couldn't believe a single submarine had caused such devastation. Tang's third patrol, June to July 1904, was even more successful. 11 ships sunk, 44,000 tons. By August 1904, Tang had the highest kill count of any active submarine in the Pacific. O'Kane had achieved legendary status, other submarine. Captains studied his tactics. His crew was considered the elite of the submarine force, and Tang was the submarine every submariner wanted to serve aboard. But success created expectations and pressure. Tang's 4th Patrol, August to October 1904, was assigned to the most dangerous waters in the Pacific, the Taiwan Strait and the East China Sea, where Japanese shipping lanes carried critical supplies from Southeast Asia to the home islands. Deep in enemy waters, the Taiwan Strait in October 1904 was one of the most heavily defended waters in the world. Japanese merchant ships transited the strait in large convoys, escorted by destroyers, sub-chasers, and aircraft. Minefields blocked certain channels, forcing ships into narrow passages that were easy to defend. Japanese anti-submarine tactics had improved dramatically since 1942. Escorts used active sonar effectively, coordinated attacks with multiple ships, and dropped depth charges more accurately than early in the war. Submarine operations in the Taiwan Strait required exceptional skill and nerves. Tang arrived on station on October 10, 1904, beginning a patrol that would become the most successful and ultimately tragic of her career. O'Kane's orders were clear: disrupt Japanese shipping, sink everything possible, accept higher risks because the strategic importance justified them. For the first 8 days, Tang stalked the strait without finding targets. Japanese convoys had temporarily suspended operations, possibly due to intelligence about submarine activity. O'Kane kept Tang submerged during daylight, surfacing at night to charge batteries and search for targets. The waiting was psychologically difficult. Tang's crew lived in a steel tube 309 feet long and 27 feet in diameter, sharing space with 24 torpedoes, tons of provisions, and machinery that generated constant noise and heat. The interior temperature ranged from 85 to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Fresh water was rationed, 1 shower per man per week. The air stank of diesel fuel, cooking odors, and 80 men living in close quarters. But O'Kane maintained morale through leadership. He moved throughout the submarine constantly, talking with enlisted men, eating with different groups in the crew mess, showing genuine interest in their lives. He remembered everyone's name, recalled Torpedo Man's mate Floyd Caverly. He knew where we were from, what our families were like. He'd ask about my daughter by name. How's little Sarah doing? He made you feel like you mattered to him personally, not just as part of the crew. That kind of leadership makes men willing to follow you into hell. On October 18th, Tang's luck changed. Radar detected a convoy at 2300 hours, 5 large transport ships escorted by 2 destroyers. O'Kane maneuvered Tang into position for a surface attack, closing to 200 yards before firing. 6 torpedoes in 90 seconds, 3 hits, 3 sinking. Transports. Tang dove to evade the escorts, endured a half-hearted depth charge attack, then resurfaced 2 hours later to continue hunting. Over the next 48 hours, Tang attacked 3 more convoys, sinking 7 additional ships. O'Kane's tactics were brutal. Attack at night, close to point-blank range, fire single torpedoes to conserve ammunition, withdraw just far enough to avoid immediate counterattack, then attack again. By October 23rd, Tang had expended 22 of her 24 torpedoes, achieving 20 hits, a 91% hit rate that was unprecedented in submarine warfare. We had 2 fish left, O'Kane later recalled. I should have headed home. We'd already had the most successful patrol in submarine history. But I knew there were more targets out there, and I couldn't leave while we still had torpedoes aboard. Would you risk everything for one more shot, or take your victory home safely? Tell me in the comments. The Circle Run. October 24th, 2 hours, Tang detected another convoy, 2 transports escorted by a destroyer. One of the transports appeared damaged, listing slightly and moving slower than normal convoy speed. O'Kane identified her as a 7,000-ton transport that Tang had damaged 2 nights earlier. She'd been hit by 1 torpedo but hadn't sunk, and was now limping toward port for repairs. That's our unfinished business, O'Kane told his crew. We're going to finish her. Tang approached on the surface, using the darkness and her low silhouette to avoid detection. The Japanese destroyer was focused on protecting the undamaged transport, leaving the damaged ship with minimal escort. O'Kane maneuvered Tang to within 2,000 yards, farther than his preferred range, but close enough for reliable hits with Tang's final 2 torpedoes. Make tubes 7 and 8 ready for firing, O'Kane ordered. In the forward torpedo room, Chief Torpedo Man's mate William Leibold supervised final preparations. The torpedoes were Mark 18 electrics, the Navy's newest design, powered by batteries rather than steam, running silently and leaving no visible wake. But Mark 18s had a notorious problem: depth control failures that caused torpedoes to run too deep, passing under targets, or too shallow, broaching the surface and alerting enemies. Even more dangerous, occasional gyroscope failures that caused torpedoes to veer off course or, in rare cases, run in circles. Leibold had maintained Tang's torpedoes meticulously throughout the patrol, but he knew that 9 months of tropical heat, constant vibration, and combat stress could cause failures despite perfect maintenance. "Tube 7 ready," Leibold reported. "Fire 7, O'Kane commanded. The torpedo ejected from Tube 7 at Euro 2:34 hours, running at 46 knots toward the damaged transport. Through his periscope, O'Kane tracked the torpedo's progress. The Mark 18's electric motor was silent, but in bright moonlight, O'Kane could see the slight disturbance of water as the torpedo ran just beneath the surface. The torpedo was running straight and true, perfect trajectory toward the target's center mass. 45 seconds after firing, boom! The torpedo struck the transport amidships, its 575-pound warhead detonating against the hull below the waterline. The ship's back broke audibly, a sharp crack that carried across the water. She began settling by the stern, clearly sinking. "Hit on the transport," O'Kane reported. "She's going down. Prepare to fire Tube 8 at the destroyer if she comes after us." But the destroyer didn't react. Her captain was focused on the undamaged transport, apparently assuming the torpedo had come from a different submarine. O'Kane decided to use his final torpedo on the undamaged transport rather than the destroyer. "Solution on the second transport," he called to his fire control team. Lieutenant Savadkin worked the torpedo data computer rapidly. Range 200 yards, target angle 95 degrees, target speed 10 knots, gyro angle 85 right. "Fire 8, O'Kane commanded at 02:37 hours. The final torpedo ejected from Tube 8. O'Kane watched through his periscope as the torpedo entered the water and began its run. For 3 seconds, everything looked normal. Then O'Kane saw something that stopped his breath. The torpedo was turning, not toward the target, but in a wide arc, curving back toward Tang. "Torpedo's running circular," O'Kane shouted. "All ahead emergency, right full rudder." Tang's diesels roared to maximum power. The submarine began turning hard right, trying to evade her own torpedo. In the control room, every man understood what was happening. Circular runs were the submariner's nightmare, a torpedo malfunction that sent the weapon running in a circle back toward the firing ship, usually caused by gyroscope failure or bent propeller shafts, always fatal if the submarine couldn't evade. Tang accelerated to 18 knots in 30 seconds. Her rudder was hard over, creating maximum turning radius. But the torpedo was faster, 46 knots, and it was already completing its circular path. O'Kane had perhaps 15 seconds to save his ship. He made the only decision possible. Dive, dive, take her down fast. Tang's diving officer flooded the ballast tanks and pushed the bow planes to full dive. The submarine's bow dipped sharply as she began her emergency dive. Too slow. At 02:37 hours and 20 seconds, exactly 20 seconds after firing, the Mark 18 torpedo slammed into Tang's stern at the waterline. The explosion was catastrophic. 575 pounds of torpex detonated against the after engine room, rupturing the pressure hull and flooding the compartment instantly. The men in the engine room, 3 enginemen and 1 electrician, died within seconds, drowned by the inrushing ocean. The explosion also ruptured the after torpedo room, flooding it immediately and trapping 2 torpedo men who'd been preparing to reload tubes. Tang's stern sank rapidly, pulling the submarine into a steep down angle. O'Kane, still on the bridge, was thrown into the water as the submarine went under. In the control room, Lieutenant Savadkin fought to control the dive. "Blow forward ballast, all back emergency," but the stern was flooded. Tang had lost all buoyancy aft. She sank stern first in less than 90 seconds, settling on the bottom at 80 feet. Of the 87 men aboard, 78 were trapped inside the sunken submarine. 9, including O'Kane, were in the water, struggling to stay afloat while Japanese ships circled overhead. Survival and sacrifice. Inside Tang's flooded hull, the survivors faced impossible choices. The forward compartments, forward torpedo room, officers' quarters, and control room were intact, but flooding slowly from ruptured seals. 30 men had survived the initial sinking, trapped in 3 compartments with rising water and dwindling air. The water was cold, 68 degrees Fahrenheit, cold enough to cause hypothermia within hours. The air pressure was increasing as water compressed the remaining airspace, causing nitrogen narcosis, headaches, and confusion. And the depth was 180 feet, at the extreme limit of human survival using the Momsen lung escape device. The Momsen lung was a primitive rebreathing apparatus issued to all submariners in 1944. A rubber bag worn around the neck, connected to a mouthpiece, containing a canister of soda lime to absorb carbon dioxide. In theory, a man could breathe from the Momsen lung while ascending slowly from a sunken submarine, exhaling constantly to prevent lung expansion injuries as pressure decreased. In practice, the device was marginally effective from depths below 150 feet. Nitrogen narcosis, panic, and rapid ascent often killed men trying to escape. Chief of the boat William Ballinger, the senior enlisted man aboard, organized the escape attempt. "Listen up," Ballinger said, his voice carrying through the dark forward torpedo room where men huddled in waist-deep water. "We're at 180 feet. That's deep, but we can make it. We've all trained for this. We go out in pairs through the forward escape trunk. Put on your Momsen lungs, breathe normally, ascend slowly, exhale constantly. Don't panic, don't hold your breath. If you hold your breath, your lungs will explode on the way up." The men knew the statistics. In training, Momsen lung escapes from 180 feet had a 40% survival rate. In combat conditions, cold water, darkness, men already exhausted and oxygen deprived, the survival rate would be much lower, but staying in the submarine meant certain death as the air ran out. The escape began at 0300 hours. 2 men entered the escape trunk, a small chamber in the forward torpedo room that could be sealed, flooded, and opened to the ocean. They donned their Momsen lungs, checked each other's equipment, and nodded to Ballinger. Ballinger sealed the inner hatch, flooded the trunk, and opened the outer hatch. The 2 men pushed themselves upward into the darkness. Ballinger waited 5 minutes, long enough for the first pair to clear the area, then sent the next pair. Over the next 2 hours, 13 men attempted escape through the forward trunk. 5 made it to the surface alive. 8 died during ascent from lung expansion injuries, nitrogen narcosis, or simply losing consciousness and drowning. In the control room, Lieutenant Savadkin led another escape attempt through a different hatch. His group included the diving officer, the quartermaster, and 3 enlisted men. Only Savadkin and 1 enlisted man survived the ascent. By 0600 hours, no one was left alive inside Tang. The men who hadn't attempted escape had succumbed to carbon dioxide poisoning as the air became unbreathable. They died quietly, slipping into unconsciousness as the submarine became their tomb. On the surface, 9 men struggled to stay afloat in the cold water. O'Kane, thrown from the bridge during the sinking, had inflated his life jacket and was swimming toward the nearest survivors. Around them, Japanese destroyer escorts circled, dropping depth charges, not realizing the submarine had already sunk. The explosions created massive concussions underwater, killing 2 of the swimming survivors instantly from internal injuries. As dawn broke on October 25th, a Japanese patrol boat spotted the survivors and picked them up. Of Tang's 87-man crew, only 9 survived, the lowest survival rate of any major U.S. submarine loss in World War II. Commander Richard O'Kane was among the survivors. Aftermath and legacy. The 9 survivors, O'Kane, Savadkin, Ballinger, and 6 enlisted men, spent the remainder of the war as prisoners in Japan. They were interrogated extensively, beaten occasionally, and malnourished constantly. But they were treated better than most Allied POWs because Japanese naval officers respected submarine crews, even enemy ones. O'Kane maintained discipline and morale among his 8 men throughout their captivity, organizing exercise routines, teaching classes to keep minds active, and reminding them that they had served aboard the greatest submarine in the war. When American forces liberated their POW camp in August 1945, O'Kane weighed 125 pounds, down from his normal 165. But he'd kept his men together and brought all 8 home alive. The Navy awarded O'Kane the Medal of Honor, America's highest military decoration, for his actions during Tang's final patrol. The citation noted that Tang had sunk 24 Japanese ships during her 5 patrols. Later research confirmed 33 ships, representing the most successful combat record of any American submarine. But the Medal of Honor citation never mentioned that Tang was lost to her own torpedo. The Navy suppressed that detail until after the war, not wanting to publicize the Mark 18's reliability problems while the weapon was still in service. O'Kane himself rarely spoke about the circular run that sank his ship. When questioned by naval investigators, he stated simply, "The torpedo malfunctioned. It happens. We knew the risks when we fired weapons in combat. I don't blame the torpedo crew, or the design. War involves equipment failures. We were unlucky." But privately, O'Kane struggled with survivor's guilt. 78 men died when Tang sank, men he'd trained, led, and promised to bring home. "I told them we'd win the war together," O'Kane confided to his wife years later. "I promised them that if they trusted me and followed procedures, we'd survive. And then I killed them with my own torpedo." How do you live with that? He lived with it by honoring their memory. After the war, O'Kane remained in the Navy, teaching submarine tactics at the Naval Submarine School. Every class he taught began the same way. "Gentlemen, I commanded the most successful submarine in the war. We sank 33 Japanese ships, and we were destroyed by our own weapon because I failed to verify that the torpedo was running correctly before firing. Learn from my mistake. In submarine warfare, your greatest enemy isn't the Japanese, it's complacency." The Mark 18 torpedo's problems were eventually solved through design improvements, but not before causing multiple submarine casualties. USS Tullabee was sunk by her own circular-running torpedo in March 1904. USS Grunion may have been lost to a circular run in July 1942, though the cause remains uncertain. The total death toll from friendly torpedo malfunctions exceeded 200 submariners, men killed by their own weapons due to design flaws and mechanical failures. Tang's wreck was located in 2000 by a joint US-Taiwanese expedition using side-scan sonar. She lies in 180 feet of water, exactly where she sank on October 25, 1904. The wreck is protected as a war grave. No salvage or disturbance is permitted. In 2001, surviving Tang crew member Floyd Caverly, one of the 9 survivors, visited the wreck site and dropped a memorial plaque into the ocean. The plaque reads, "In memory of the 78 officers and men of USS Tang who rest below, sacrificed in victory, you are not forgotten. In war, is dying from your own weapon more tragic than dying from enemy fire? I'd love to hear your perspective." Tang's story raises difficult questions about submarine warfare tactics. O'Kane's aggressive approach achieved unprecedented success. 33 ships sunk, 116,000 tons destroyed. More Japanese shipping eliminated than any other submarine, but that aggression came at a cost. Tang operated in the most dangerous waters, took risks that other captains avoided, and pushed her crew and equipment to the limit. Ultimately, that approach contributed to her loss. If O'Kane had withdrawn after expending 22 torpedoes, an already record-breaking patrol, Tang would have returned home safely. If he had fired that final torpedo from 3,000 yards instead of 2,000 standard doctrine range, there might have been time to evade the circular run. If he'd been more cautious, 78 men might have survived. But submarine warfare in 1904 wasn't about caution. It was about strangling Japan's economy by sinking the merchant ships that carried oil, rubber, steel, and food to the home islands. Every ship that reached Japan extended the war. Every convoy that arrived intact meant more American casualties in future battles. Submarine captains like O'Kane understood this calculus. They accepted higher risks because the strategic payoff justified those risks. Tang's 33 kills represented critical resources that never reached Japanese factories, fuel that never powered Japanese aircraft, food that never fed Japanese troops. In that context, O'Kane's aggression wasn't recklessness. It was calculated acceptance of risk for strategic gain. "I'd do it again," O'Kane said in a 1960 interview. "Knowing how it ended, I'd still make the same choices. Because those 33 ships we sank, saved American lives in the Philippines, at Iwo Jima, at Okinawa. The equation was simple: risk one submarine and 87 men to remove 33 ships and thousands of tons of supplies from Japan's war effort. That's not recklessness, that's mathematics. The mathematics of submarine warfare were brutal. The U.S. Navy lost 52 submarines during World War II, 3,805 submariners killed, a casualty rate of 22%, the highest of any American service. But those 52 submarines and 3,005 men sank 1,114 Japanese merchant ships, totaling 5.3 million tons, crippling Japan's economy and shortening the war. Tang represented that brutal mathematics at its most extreme: maximum aggression, maximum success, maximum cost. The waters of the Taiwan Strait are quiet now. USS Tang rests on the bottom where she sank 80 years ago. Her crew still aboard, entombed in the submarine they trusted with their lives. But their sacrifice wasn't meaningless. Tang's 33 kills helped strangle Japan's war economy. Her tactics became doctrine that other submarines followed, and her crew demonstrated that ordinary men, led well and trained thoroughly, could achieve extraordinary things, even when those things cost them everything. Richard O'Kane died in '94 at age 83. His last words to his family were, "Tell them Tang was the best submarine with the best crew that ever went to sea." He was right. These stories of courage, sacrifice, and the terrible costs of war deserve to be remembered. Subscribe so they never fade into history. Next time, the aircraft carrier that wouldn't sink, and the damage control party that saved her through 5 bomb hits and 2 torpedoes.